My name is Robin Harper, amongst other things the former leader of the Green Party in Scotland. I was a teacher and I only left when I was elected to the Scottish Parliament at the age of 60. When you consider that I was the only Green in the Parliament, I think the Parliament, as it was working and set up at that time, it really was geared to give everybody a voice, even a single person like myself with something to say. We were fighting all the way to get people to look at our agenda and vote for it. And on the ground, it worries me that it seems that the population of Scotland are thinking the Green Party have drifted away slightly from their central ethic. You know, that's our core raison d'etre, is the environment and getting it right. I can't believe this has happened. Air quality, it knows no boundaries. It comes on the wind. So you have to have as wide an area as possible if you're going to make any rules about air quality. The quality of our seas and rivers. Some rivers are shared in the UK, for instance, between the Welsh and the English and the Scots and the English. I formulated a view some time ago. The Green Party have got used to this. I don't agree with their backing of independence. And I was particularly distressed when Patrick said this is a one-off decision. Well, if we're to address the problems of the environment in the world and in Scotland and at a local level, it is absolutely mandatory, really, that people should cooperate and meet as much as they possibly can. We could be in the middle of the swiftest and greatest extinction event in the history of the world if we're not careful. It's not good enough for one country for Scotland, for instance, to boast that we have more clean electricity than any of the other countries in the United Kingdom. We need to look at all the things that we could improve by cooperating between the four nations. That would take us forward. But the next big thing is, I think, democracy and the threats to democracy throughout the world. I think it would be a mistake to abandon a system simply because it has been misused by an energetic populist. This is all democratic systems are vulnerable, and this is what we have to beware of. If you look at what's happening in American politics, organizations like QAnon and so on, is pretty terrifying. And I think that's what is happening in British politics as well, which really needs to be addressed, is that it's showing all the gaps and weaknesses in our own democratic system. All democracies are vulnerable to populism and they just have to guard against it. Well, what I hope is that we will breathe life into the United Kingdom democracies, and stronger particularly in education and the swapping of ideas, and stronger in terms of having the confidence to meet with each other and have dialogues over difficult problems. I listened to Donald Dewar's first speech in the Parliament. He was a sad loss, he really was. And that phrase, that devolution is not an event, it's a process, has stuck in my mind ever since. But that process has not happened in Scotland. Instead of it devolvement going down to the councils, the central government has taken more power, and the councils themselves give no money to the next level down. The rise of the mayoralities, I suppose you would call, is very interesting because it seems to be breathing a lot of life into towns and cities in England. Maybe in Scotland, we need to take a look at local councils and maybe some of our small towns. Why, for instance, is there no town council in Crieff? We're not spending money on local democracy. We're in a position now where local councils in Scotland seem to have less power than they had before, and the government, the central government, having more power. There's been a process of centralisation over the last 8 years, which is a bit alarming. Scotland wants more democracy, wants to be richer, wants to be happier, etc. Another referendum would not actually solve very much at all. We'd be left with the same arguments going on and on and on. For a start, we need to take the heat out of the discussion. There's a lot of toxicity around in some of the discussions, which I think is quite frightening. And we need to have a few months, maybe even years of peace while people try and sort things out. We've had a referendum. The people who wanted independence lost. But that left a substantial minority, you could hardly call them a minority, nearly half of Scotland, really rather peeved. And if the independence parties won, again, we wouldn't be any further on, because almost half of Scotland would be feeling very, very angry and disappointed. There was a great sense of, amongst all the MSPs, I think, at the beginning, of friendliness. When people came into committees and surveyed the events and discussions in committees, I think they would have found it very, very difficult to work out who was in what party, because of the nature, the good-spirited nature of the dialogue in committees in the Scottish Parliament. We were searching for best ways forward. Some people did get very, very fired up indeed, and those were the ones who joined the Green Party and became active. But also, of course, you had people who'd campaigned for years with Friends of the Earth, people who'd campaigned and devoted a lot of energy to the World Wildlife Fund, and countless other environmental organizations. You know, institutions change, the people in the institutions change, but there's not quite the same sense of common purpose between all the parties. And I think they need to find that level of dialogue that there used to be again, and listen to all the ideas that are around about how we can make better lives for ourselves and for a secure and productive and happy future. We might get somewhere.